Welcome everybody. Welcome to this lunchtime topic. Today's August 27th. We are welcoming Victoria Baylor today. She is a certified mindset and brilliance brand coach. She's a TEDx speaker, teacher, consultant, and she's a #1 Amazon bestselling author. She's going to be talking to us today about the art of creating a magnetic brand, how to stand out and easily attract your ideal client. So we're really excited to have you, Victoria. I'm going to go ahead and hand over the controls to you and make you a co-host so you can share your screen.
Thank you. And while I'm waiting for this to populate, I would, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and to share. And for everyone that took the time to jump on, I really appreciate that. You got to love, of course, technology. You know, in the end, sometimes it's just not our friends, even though it does make life really, really easy. So I'm just waiting for something to come up really quick, and then I will share my screen. But to get things kind of started, or I guess going, I'm always curious to see where people hail from. So if you would not mind in the chat box, because I know the World Wide Web is open to all of us, I would love to know where some of you guys are from. I know everybody's not here in Savannah, so please let me know, where are you calling in from or viewing from? Would love to know that while I wait on this. Okay, let's see what we have in the box. We have some people. Okay, we got Savannah, Pam and Savannah. Okay, Stephanie. Hey, Stephanie, it's good to see you. I know Rodrika, Pamela Cummings. Okay, wonderful. Anybody from somewhere cold right this minute? Anyone from, another continent, another place, please chime in. We're, of course, happy to have you. And I'm just going to pull this up so I can share. Oh, perfect. Thank God. Just in the nick of time. Okay, wonderful. All right, so give me 1 second, and I will share my screen, and we'll get started. Share. Okay, so you should see my PowerPoint, and I'm gonna start here, and you should see the title slide, which is the art of creating a magnetic brand. So as Kate, thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. As she mentioned, I am a brand brilliance and mindset coach. So I work one-on-one with clients to help them tap into their own unique brilliance so that they can actually infuse that into their brand and differentiate themselves in the marketplace so they can create more impact and income for themselves and get their ideas seen and heard. So I absolutely love what I get to do. And I think the topic for today is really befitting given the climate that we're in, where there's so much of what was norm for so many people, what was defined is kind of, unfortunately, due to COVID and just people having to pivot, they're having to kind of reinvent themselves or either change the way they see what they do or what they offer in the market. So my element is, I guess I'll go ahead and let the cat out the bag because I don't like to beat around the bush on this one, is what my focus is primarily is on people. So I'm definitely the personal development side of branding and mindset work, because I feel like, and definitely my own conviction is, when you can help people work better, when you can help them be better in and of themselves, quite naturally, business is going to be better. So I love being able to offer that, my insights and my skills, being a certified coach and a lot of my background to help do that. So what do I mean by the art of creating a magnetic brand? Well, we're going to get into that. But in order to do so, I like to kind of start off a little bit different. Sometimes I don't think it's really good just to start off pumping people full of information. Look, you've already come to the table, this whole presentation full of your own thoughts, your own insights. I think oftentimes it's really good to unload, kind of do the opposite. From what we're normally thinking, take some time to kind of decompress so you can actually receive a little bit more insights. So with that being said, my promise, as I always promise people, is not to definitely bore you, because that is an insult to not only your intelligence, but also your time. But in exchange, in return, I do ask that you just kind of be open to what I offer and have to say today, because I have a feeling that it may shift the way you think about stuff. Okay, so to start, I want you not to think of yourself in terms of what you currently do. You have a new occupation. Your occupation for the next 2 minutes is that you are an apple picker. So I want you to imagine that you've spent the entire day out on the apple grove, I think that's what they're called, because I never apple picked. I've always wanted to. And as you know, when you get into an apple orchard, there's tons and tons and tons of apples. You get buckets, and people that pick apples get paid based on what they pick and bring, and turn in. So you're going to go about your normal routine. You're picking apples, and you get to the point where they have to be weighed so you can be compensated. What would you do if the scale is broke? So you come with like bushels and bushels and bushels of apples, but you're not showing anything for it. Scale is broke. So I know, of course, we'll have different reactions. Some people will be a little heated. Some people will be a little bit upset. So that's understood. But what's interesting about that whole notion, I actually want to shift your thinking about that a little bit. That to me represents oftentimes the person in business, the entrepreneur, the professional. Oftentimes we are doing, giving, we're putting in the effort, we're, connecting with clients, we're doing our marketing, we're doing all this stuff, and then we end up in a situation oftentimes where we're not getting really the return on investment on what we're putting out. And then we scratch our heads, we go back to the drawing board, we think about it again, we try some more stuff, we test, we experiment, and how many of you kind of hit that brick wall? And sometimes, how many of you now, even if you have a very successful business, have those moments where you run into that issue? I always say we have issues like that, it's always time to recalibrate. And in this instance, I want you to not think about the apples and the scale, but I want you to think about the recalibration of yourself that may be needed, because oftentimes that is just the trick. So with that being said, is it time to recalibrate? So I want you to think, as I mentioned, are you getting the results back that you're really putting out into your business or your endeavors? Are you really clear on the value that you bring to the market? Are you being compensated for it? Because we know there's nothing worse than giving 10,000% and getting a minuscule 1% back on an ROI. Have you found the people who need your product or service? And are you able to expand? So if you're in a situation where you really feel like, no, I'm not kind of getting what I need, or I feel like there are some pockets within my endeavors in business that I'm kind of not operating and functioning in the best way possible, this is a great time to recalibrate. And in this case, we want to actually recalibrate your thinking. Primarily, you're thinking about yourself. So today, real simple, it's kind of I probably give formal talks because I did spend 15 years in research science, but it's formal in the sense that there's a structure to this, but everything else is definitely fluid. I want to change your insights and things. We're going to have a little bit of fun. So don't think to throw a bunch of numbers at you and, kind of make you glaze over. Hopefully this will be very engaging and empowering for you. But we're going to actually look at personal branding misconceptions. Then we're going to shift into looking at the power of your personal brand, because oftentimes we're not getting the feedback, the results, the success we want. It really reflects on that, the personal brand piece. And then finally, we're going to talk about what this entire talk is based on, which is how to attract your ideal client. And I hope that sounds good for you. So misconceptions is always a great place to start, because the word brand gets thrown around. Like if I had money for every time someone said brand, I'd have a nice little nest egg, and as you would as well, because it gets thrown around a lot. And oftentimes people are using it in different contexts and they don't realize the interchangeableness of it. So I want to kind of set that record straight. So you have visual branding, which is your business cards, things of that nature. And then you have the side of branding, which is personal branding, which is related to you. So I will be talking about personal branding. And what personal branding is not is the business cards, the websites. It's definitely not optional, because technically everyone has one. Question is, are you doing something with it? It's not a waste of time. So you thinking, okay, I'd rather spend all my time and energy in my product and service, and I'm just going to hide behind somewhere and let that speak for me. We'll talk about the downside of that. And hence, it's not your product or service, it is you. But what it is your professional image. And when it's done right, become the greatest part of you, which is a favorable reputation, because reputations are really big in business. And the right reputation will get you the right results that you're looking for. A good personal brand will allow you to stay top of mind, which means that if someone thinks of something in relation to what you do, So vacation rental cleaning. I have a friend on here who does that. The first person they're going to think of is, okay, I remember her. That's the person I need to think about, versus maybe 5 or 10 other people they thought about. So being top of mind has its advantages. And then of course, having that relevance in your market. If people know you for something and you become known for that thing and that your expertise is solidified, then that does give you a great place in the market to kind of stand out and be seen by more people. So your personal brand in a nutshell, is your ability to stand out and get noticed. But oftentimes this part gets glazed over because people are jumping to the visual brand of things. They're thinking about, okay, well, let me go ahead and market this product or service and get my website up and get everything else. And they really don't realize that your personal brand is actually way deeper, and it actually will help you better with your actual branding from a visual perspective if you tap into it. So I do like Jeff Bezos. Well, his statement here, even though I had like 9 packages probably come from I'm a guilty Amazon user, but I do like the perspective he offers about personal branding. Here he says it is your personal brand, or your brand, which is really what we're using in the context of personal branding, which is kind of what he alludes to. Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So if you think about, what that really means for you and the sustaining part of your business, if people are saying positive things about you, think about that. Then the word's spreading about you, you have brand ambassadors, people are liking and talking about you and trusting you, and other people are coming on board. And the opposite token, that if negative things are said about you, imagine what's happening. That means someone doesn't walk through your door. They said, no, I'm not going to make that phone call and inquire. Says, nope, I'm just going to skip over that ad online and not even look at it. I'm not going to watch the video. This person doesn't have the best reputation. So it's really important to start thinking about, what am I putting off? Not just so much what is my product or service, but for myself, am I really kind of mindful about how I'm being perceived in business? Because even if you're not the face of your company, and no one says you has to be, or your business, your presence is super important to it. So we know the challenges of marketing and getting yourself out there and being seen. And most of us, well, this is a very interesting little stat. So obviously since the onstart, or since social media just kind of exploded, exploded, there's so many different ways to share information nowadays. And this is just like a minimum. And I even feel like this graphic is very, very old. This is a very interesting number. So, and I have a feeling it's probably more than this now, but at the time when I did this presentation, maybe about a year ago, I shared this information. It was saying that most people get on average about 30,000 messages every day. So at first I was like, no, that can't be correct. That's crazy. That's a lot of messages. And I did the math and kind of got it down to like the second. And then I looked at my habits when I like scroll online. And I think specifically, like if you consider social media, like if you're on Facebook or something like that and you're scrolling, and we really literally do look at a lot during the course of the day. So I don't have to tell you how important it is to stand out in the sea of information that everybody being inundated with. So for your ideal client to see you, you're going to have to really take some unique measures to make sure that you're standing out, because otherwise you're going to end up with this. And for those of us that remember this, I don't even know, I think they do, Where's Waldo now? It's fun in games when you're trying to find Waldo from a game perspective. But in business, if you're Waldo, that's a problem. Because oftentimes your client's not going to follow up with you. They're not going to take the time to look. Some of them just won't find you. And that would be a problem. So we don't want this to be the result. And I think I still have not found Waldo. He's in there. I saw him. Anyway, so you get my point. This is definitely the scenario you want to avoid. So in this sea of product and services, I can pretty much tell you that oftentimes we think what we have to offer is so unique, but I hate to be the one to tell you that it is not oftentimes. And even if it is unique, you still have to be able to grab people's attention, maintain it, keep them, so they go through the entire process with you of becoming the whole brand exposure and becoming a customer and then returning. So there's a lot at stake. I think sometimes we put too much stock into our product and service and we don't realize that it's not our greatest advantage. But what is your greatest advantage is something that can't be mimicked. And believe it or not, it actually is you. You are actually the best billboard for your business. And the rest of the presentation, we're going to go into the whys of that, but it's for a simple reason. There's nobody else quite like you. They don't have the same experience. They don't have a lot of what you've experienced, gone through, insights, all of that. You have very unique factors that make you you. And if you learn to leverage those even within your business, it's going to make you a very strong billboard for being the person to either pitch and share and connect with people, all those things that are really necessary to really attract your ideal client. So let's look at unique factors. And of course, I could do a whole workshop for like weeks about this. This is kind of like my playground because I love to talk about how amazing people are, because I know what often happens is we underestimate what we have. Because oftentimes we're looking at ourselves on one or two levels, and then we're looking at ourselves from the perspective of, how do I measure up with someone else? Technically, you can't compare apples to oranges. Genetically, they're different. You can't compare people. So the smartest thing is to start looking at, how do I differ? But then being different has its own vulnerabilities and challenges, and how do I infuse that in my business? So then that's where someone like me comes in. Because my job is being able to see your superpower and then tell you how you can leverage it in your business. So with that being said, you have amazing unique factors such as your values, your belief systems, your experiences, the story behind the work that you do, all of that kind of stuff, your particular genius. And I wish I could go into all of those, but I just want to list those to illustrate, and we'll kind of touch a little bit on it later. But what's neat is that those unique factors can lend itself to your brand in a very unique way, because they can actually become the bedrock, the foundation for your brand identity. So if you start thinking about, what is the message that I want to be known for? How do I want to be known? What reputation do I want to have? It's actually always about working backwards. So you're going to think about, where am I at now? And then what is it that I want to achieve? And then you work back from there. And the greatest thing I really, really love is that you control that ability. You control what people see. So if you're not liking the feedback, if you're not liking the interactions, if it's really hard for you to deal with people and you say, well, maybe I have some struggles, I need some, help with a little bit of emotional intelligence, dealing with different aspects of people, those things you can fix, correct, and work on those areas. Now, if it's a true weakness, something you're just not the best of, I say ditch that and focus on your strength. But my point is that you control how people see you. But you have to be very clear on you first. And that's just the biggest thing. And then once you're clear on that, what your brand message is and what your unique value is, what you offer, then you can go into play of doing the fun stuff, which is, how do I communicate that to people? And then that's through the use of your appearance and your body language and your confidence. There's so many tools that we have at our disposal that most people don't realize. And then they just hide behind their product or service. See what I'm saying? That's where it gets a little bit, we're really missing out. So in short, and I that was not a mistype, I am obsessed with you. That is the truth, as I'm obsessed with all my clients. And I have to be, because my biggest goal, again, my job is to make sure people are tapping into what makes them innately brilliant. Because again, when you operate from a place that's uniquely you, there technically isn't any competition. Now there's competition in the market, but you want to be the unicorn in the always say in the crowd of horses. You want to be the person that stand out in a very unique way. So I help people do that. And that's why I'm obsessed with that part. And a lot of the reason why sometimes people can't stand out, I'm also a mindset coach, is because oftentimes they have mental blocks that don't allow them to see what makes them different. Because one of the biggest things we do oftentimes, because we do things so easily, is downplay their importance and not see how it's valuable. But we'll get into that. So everybody in my mind is, of course, they have a strong level of brilliance. They are a diamond. But what's very interesting is if you've ever seen a diamond in the rock, like the picture on the left, you kind of can't tell it's a diamond. It actually looks like a shard of glass. So the saddest thing is to be of something of so much unique value, but not be polished, shaped, and cut in such a way where it is apparent. One thing about diamonds, they don't lose their value. And it's one of the strongest structures on the earth. So if you think about it from that standpoint, what you have to offer, there is strength in that. There's strength in what you bring to the marketplace, what you can, if you're not already, and even in your perspective and the way in which you can carve out your brand identity. But it has to be done in a very unique way. And it gets really tricky because to me, and what I like to promote and teach is that everybody has their own unique formula. And because we're not looking at one thing, personality to personality or talent to talent, we're looking at multiple parts of you and building a brand identity around that supports what you're doing in business. So you have a lot of assets. So if you felt like, or sometimes you feel like you don't, we're going to talk a little bit about that. You want to question that. So what does it really, I guess to get to the point of why we're here, which is talking about really attracting people. You can have all the best assets in the world, which is great, but if you don't communicate them properly, there's going to be an issue. And even more so, I think what Pepe Le Pew here, and as if you've ever seen the movie Fatal Attraction, good Lord, I think what these two demonstrate is that you can't force an attraction. So you can have the goods to create that kind of attraction, but if you don't know how to leverage it and then actually be able to connect with people, then it's not going to really work. And then you can't force it. I remember as a girl watching Pepe Le Pew, it was probably the saddest thing on the planet, just tracked down. I don't even think she was like a cat. She wasn't even a skunk. So like he completely misidentified his ideal client, if you want to say, and just had all kinds of problems. But hopefully even out of the humor, you can kind of see what I'm saying is that there has to be another way to get your ideal client's attention. So one unique thing, and I like to note this, and this isn't kind of like just the sciencey side of me, but this is a fact. And I always say it's very important to leverage your advantages and leverage what is just true. Like just oftentimes there's so much information out there we don't know, we're not applying and using it, and we're missing out opportunities. And one of the biggest things I wanted to highlight is here, people process uniquely. So if you're talking about how am I getting my client's attention, you want to think about how do they process information? Because if you know how they process information, it'll make you a little bit more cognizant about what information you decide to put out there. That's when it becomes key. So I'm a mindset coach, so of course this stuff resonates with me, but what I want to share is, actually let me just take it back off. You probably already read it, but there's two parts of the mind, and one part actually processes, just kind of give you an idea of how fast people process information. It says that one part of the mind processes at 400, I think it's bips, so that's bits of information per second, and it travels at 100,000 miles per hour versus the other part of our brain, which actually processes about 2,000 bips and then travels at 100, 150 miles per hour. To me, both are impressive. I'm in my car. I don't drive it at 150. That would be outrageous. But when you think about how fast the mind works, obviously the first notation is really, really what stands out. So what's interesting about that is the actual part of our mind we're not even aware of half the time. It's the subconscious part. And then the conscious part is the part that we're aware of. So in this moment, consciously, you were here in this presentation, you were thinking through what I'm talking about. Subconscious information may be something that got stored there that oftentimes you don't know it's there, but your brain knows how to access it, but you respond to it. My point in saying this is that oftentimes the response of your intended client or the person whose attention you're trying to get, it happens so fast that you have to be really on guard and really mindful about what you're putting out there, because you can either repel them or attract them in a matter of moments. So my illustration here is, if there's anything you take away from this presentation is I want you to encourage you to know that be careful. Everything you say, do, speak, it's not about putting you on being at a place of where you're looking over your shoulder, you're being a little bit nerve-wracked by this. But if anything, I think it's very empowering, because it goes to show that you can put out, if you do your market research, we're talking about not just throw anything out there, But if you're very smart in what you put out there, subconsciously, people will be attracted and don't even know why they're attracted. That's why that old adage, a picture's worth 1,000 words, screams volumes, because oftentimes a picture is all it takes to convert someone and connect with them. So are you really leveraging this information? And also, real quick, when it comes to attracting or connecting with your ideal client, let's not forget about the human side of connections. Again, I don't know about you, I can tell on myself, I can get so, so bent up in the mechanics of doing the business, that sometimes you forget it's just the humans. Well, probably less from my side because I am a mindset coach and I like studying humans, but I think anybody can fall prey to that. I do have my moments where you just kind of get so caught up in the mechanics, making sure something works, making sure it's right, making sure the font's good, making sure you're dressed well, that you forget it really is about human connections. And it's down to that old, as they say, know, like, trust factors. Do people know you? And as it says, it takes about 5 to 7 impressions to even start creating brand awareness, to get people aware of you. So if you think about that impression, the speed of the brain, boy, you want to really make some good impressions so that you stick. The like factor, here it says that 89% of shoppers stay loyal to brands that share their values. So hence, going back to the personal branding side, what are your values? What messages are you putting out there that's going to be the bait to attract your ideal client? And then lastly, the trust. It says 80% of consumers purchase based on recommendations from someone they know. So when people trust you, they're going to tell people that they trust you. And then we all know what happens from a referral-based kind of business. It can be very lucrative. Okay, so with that being said, I want to focus now, and before we wrap things up, in the last part, which is how do you actually, since we don't force interactions, and since you do have means to connect and organically attract people, how do you get into what I like to slide into thinking as the art of attraction? And you can think of the science of it, but what I love about the art is that it gives room for you to be you. I think sometimes people get into business and they get so stuffy and it's so mechanical. But if you think about your relationship with people, they actually aren't that way. Unless you are just a group of people that's your thing, just kind of being a little stuffy. And then that's even great because it's like-minded people attract like-minded people. So no judgments. My point is that there is an art form to attracting. And I think if we kind of take a slightly different viewpoint of it, we'll realize that getting clients is actually a lot easier than maybe what you've been putting yourself through. So in this case, I actually like to look at, I want to channel the bumblebee. And I don't want to highlight it because it's always like the hero. And I get it. It is responsible for a whole bunch of everything, fruits, vegetables, pollination. But what's actually interesting in this case is that it's actually the flower that attracts the bee. So with that being said, if you think about yourself in business, if the bee is like your ideal client, what are you doing that's going to bring them to you? That's where you're able to shift kind of the paradigm, the way you kind of look at all of this. What are you doing to pull them in? And with bees is really simple. So obviously plants need bees to reproduce. They rely on them. They don't need them, but they rely on them. And the whole pollination thing, I won't spell that out to you because sometimes I'm a little bit, I get the mechanics, but you get my point. But we know that they take the material from the flower, and they transfer it all over the place. And bees by themselves, though, tend to be drawn to certain types of plants that are readily available. They have the nectar, they have the pollen, they don't have to fight for it, it's there. And then last but not least, bees are also, they notice the colors and scents. So there's elements of the flower that really attracts the bee. So if you think about that being yourself in business, what elements do you have that's attractive to your ideal client? Because remember, you're not forcing at this point. They're going to see it, they're going to want to connect, they're going to land there, and they're going to want to go back to the hive, drop off stuff, and then bring some more of their friends. So it's really important to know that. So with that being said, we're going to look at our last 3 pointers here. How do you attract more clients? And the first one is you want to share your value. The second is you want to flaunt your personality. And then the third one is you want to maintain consistency. Okay, so with that being said, attraction number 1, share your unique value. So there's 1,000 different ways to talk about core values. As I mentioned, there's so many different aspects of you that make you unique, and you can use those aspects to talk about your service or good. Remember, we talked about whether it's your brand story, your experiences, your perspective, your values. Those are really neat. One thing sometimes that gets overlooked is your intelligence. So I know people have, conflicting thoughts about intelligence, and it's not even worth getting into the argument. However, I am going to mention that because there are certain things that we have innately, or they even can get developed, but they give us a unique advantage. And intelligence is one of those. And depending upon who you follow, some people say there's 8, 9, or 10 different types. Here I have 10 listed. And just for the sake of our time, I can't go through them, but you might be able to kind of glaze over them and look and see, okay, and understand just by reading them. Verbal mathematics, that's actually what's picked up in school. So if you think about that fact alone, that's what ends up being judged and tested. If you're only looking at 2 types, for the kid that wasn't really good in their verbal and mathematics, what do you think that just sent, the message sent to them when they left school? You're not very intelligent. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And that really gets under my belt. And I was a high performing student, but we're all wired differently. Just because someone's good in 2 areas, there's still so many different types of intelligence. And that's what I love to explore when I work with clients. So if you look at interpersonal, intrapersonal, how you relate to people, how do you relate to yourself, process your thoughts. I know people have high entrepreneurial intelligence. You'll see them, they'll have 8, 9, 10 businesses. You're like, how in the world do they do that? Because again, they have kind of the markers, that internal ability and bent to be able to do that. So I want you to think in terms of, and again, this list could go on. This is just one part of it. But I want you to think in terms of what are you extraordinarily gifted at doing? What comes really easy to you? And then how can you elevate that strength to a genius level? Because anytime you take intelligence and you actually develop it more, you start getting into the area of genius. And what's really interesting is, and the reason I say this is oftentimes we don't see these things about ourselves and we're missing it. And it's not because we don't have the elements, it's in the wrong arena. And I think this Albert Einstein quote, which by the way, he had high abstract intelligence. I don't even want to start thinking about the things he thought about. I'm not wired that way. But his quote here is very befitting. It says, everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. It's the wrong place. So it's always great to think about, okay, is the work I'm doing, the business, the service, the product, everything I'm offering, is it in alignment with me? Or am I using that aspect of myself to further help promote that in a very unique way? So something very important to think about. And just to kind of elevate it, or just to bring it home, as I mentioned before, intelligence is just one of the things that make you you. I like to think about it, and I talk about this often, is everyone has their own version of their secret sauce. And as you can see, it's kind of circled. So there's so many other elements. And we know sauce isn't just mayonnaise. That would be horrible. It's not a sauce, it's just mayonnaise. But mayonnaise can be a base in part. And then you can add a paprika, and you can add all of the other aspects and completely transform it. You have your own secret sauce. And don't forget that intelligence is an important component of that. And if you don't know where you're super intelligent, you definitely want to connect to someone that can help you in that regard. A coach, someone like that. Of course, you need to ask me questions. I am here. Second attractant, you want to flaunt your personality. So I'm going to ask a real quick question. What do these 4 characters have in common? And actually, if you want, you can drop it in text. I don't know if I probably can't access it as fast. But I have a feeling that you all thought really quick. We all know the answer. It's insurance. One of these people stuck out to you, maybe multiple ones if you watch a lot of TV or if you get commercials a lot. But what's very interesting about this is that insurance is, believe it or not, very boring. If you're an insurance company, how do you stand out? You give yourself a spokesperson, and that spokesperson has a personality. Insurance companies are smart. They know how to humanize themselves because they know that you'll go with them if you like something that connects with you. The mayhem guy from Allstate is hilarious, watching him do all kinds of crazy things. If you're one of those people that have that level of humor, then you're like, okay, well, let me explore. Let me look at what Allstate represents. Some of you is the gecko. So if it works for big insurance companies and that whole human quality is important, imagine for yourself. Because truthfully, having a great personality in and of yourself as part of your personal brand really does boost loyalty and customer retention. It lets people feel like they really know you. And it helps them feel like they can relate. And the thing is this, oftentimes we don't know what our core natural personality is, that sometimes some people might overcompensate or feel like they have to be an Oprah Winfrey. You get a car, you don't have to be, you have to be you. Remember, it's not the sum of one of your elements, it's the total of all of them together that creates the secret sauce, that creates you, that creates your personal brand. And as you can see from the 5 listed below, there's different types of personal brands, or different versions or ways in which your personality can be showcased. You can have more of an excitement to you as a person. I know people, that's their personality, or they're very bubbly. Some people are very sincere. You can gravitate toward them. You feel like they're trustworthy. Some people have that ruggedness. There's the competence. Some people you connect with because you're like, wow, I like the personality. I feel like they know what they're talking about. You gravitate. And then the sophistication. You know, some people like Maserati doesn't do commercials, but some people like the brand and will skip over a Toyota because they like the personality. What does it represent to them? So it's so important to know that with yourself, because again, you are the billboard for your business. What are you putting out there that's going to attract the people, make yourself more attractive so they'll use your services and products? And then last but not least, you want to maintain consistency. And just on the right is a list of the things, again, that are important to you as a person. But I put this here because we oftentimes don't think about the power of consistency. But if you, and I don't eat much fast food myself, but Chick-fil-A waffle fries would probably be it. But if you think about it, think about your favorite place to eat. The thing that keeps pulling you back over and over again is that element of consistency. You know what you're going to get. Actually, you're anticipating it. So it's so important. I can say if there's anything, you can go through great lengths, develop a great brand strategy. You can do all of these amazing things and then lose people because the day they decide to come into your shop, the day they decide to have a phone conversation with you, you've switched things up. Like they don't even recognize what was marketed to them. So consistency is very, very powerful. I love it in the sense of this picture here with the bees, because we go back to that visual of the flower attracting the bee, and that bee is that ideal client. Well, think about what happens when, again, the bee leaves. The bee goes back to the hive, and it's amongst all of its brethren. That's right, because the drones are, that's right, the female. Okay, I didn't make sure I said that right. But it's amongst all of its people, and that's the time where information can be exchanged and all that good stuff. You see where I'm going with that? That's the same with people, your ideal client. They go back into their hives. They go back to the people they're affiliated with, and they start sharing information about you. You want to make sure that you're giving them something that, remember, 5 to 7 touches, it takes them to recognize your brand. And then once they get the consistency of it, they're knowing, they're liking it, they're trusting it, and then they're sharing it with other people. It becomes this cycle that you don't want to end, that just keeps getting bigger with customers. So consistency is such an important part. So to kind of wrap things up, just to kind of go through it, I want you definitely to remember that you're the most important part of your personal brand. It's you. You're the advantage in your business. Not so much your product and service. It's what you do yourself and how you can use yourself to elevate your product and service. And that you do have 3 ways to be attracting clients. So you definitely want to look at what the value is you provide. And what I didn't mention about the intelligence piece is, and forgive me for not saying this, the reason it's important to look at something like that is because wherever you are completely skilled and gifted at, that oftentimes shows that you have the ability to solve a problem that's difficult for someone else. So that positions you to be of value. And when you're of value, now we're starting to talk about the mechanics of business, being able to help other people and help relieve their pain or help them achieve pleasure or whatever it is they desire. But you are uniquely positioned to do that. So your value is that piece. The second thing, of course, is value. The second thing is, let me go back. It's my brain. The second thing, of course, is your personality. And then, of course, you want to maintain the consistency. So thank you so very much. I hope we stay connected. I'd love to take your questions now. And of course, if you want to join in, jump on my mailing list, you can just text your information to me using this number, or you're welcome to just email or visit my website. But thank you so very much for your time and attention.
Thank you. That was awesome. That was great. Thank you so much, Victoria. Does anybody have any questions? We got about 10 minutes left before we stop pretty promptly at 1, but we can continue over after closing out for those that need to go get back to work. But let's wrap up here in the next 10 minutes with some questions. I gotta say, in my last job prior to this, I worked as a job coach, and we would hit hundreds of businesses in a month. And I don't know if there's that many out there in Hinesville, but I think I've been to, one of my areas was Hinesville, and I think I've been to every business in Hinesville. And I will say, across the board, me and all of the other job coaches, we found that we didn't start getting traction with businesses to get them to hire our clients until after like 5 to 7 touches, almost exactly that number. So I just had to second that and say, like, I really find that to be true, and have found that to be true.
Well, it's pretty amazing. If you don't mind, just chime in that. It's interesting how that works, because I think we are so inundated with information that sometimes even people don't forget. They don't mean to forget. I remember I have a friend that makes amazing double cake. And my husband was a birthday, we always use that. Anyway, I just forgot she made the cake. And she's a friend, and I just forgot. So I think oftentimes that really underscores the importance of continually marketing and having that consistency and being out where your people are, just to say, hey, we're here. And it's not really so much about the product and service. It's about how do you add value to their lives. Most people actually don't even know they may need your product or service. So until you start talking about whatever that pain point is or whatever that issue is, you're going to start getting some feedback. It's not really so much just pitching it, but it's pitching it in terms of course, how you are, your personal brand, and how you're able to make the connections in the best way possible. Can I ask a question of the group? If then no one has questions, actually, I'll give a second if someone has questions. And there's no such thing as I always said, the worst question, the question is never asked. So there's no such thing as a bad question. Please ask away. I would love to know what is for, and feel free to jump in the chat and I'll open my chat. Should I stop my share? Sorry, I forgot I had it up.
You can leave it up if you want, if people want to reach out, if they haven't gotten your information, whichever you want to do.
Okay, I don't know if I can, see if I can access chat with it up. I'll just stop it for a moment. Oh, I can, okay. I would love to know what, for our wonderful listeners, or viewers, what is oftentimes their challenge in putting themselves out there? Because people always talk about put yourself out there or showcase yourself, and then people are like, what the heck am I supposed to say? Like, how do I do this? It's like that awkward, holding a baby for the first time. Your business is almost like your newborn, your child. And it's like, it takes a minute to kind of hold it right. And, before you start sharing it to other people, I'd love to know, what are your challenges? Anyone? So how many businesses do we have represented here? If you don't mind throwing that in the chat, I'd love to see what you have or what's here. Chat. Okay. Oh, Stephanie put something in there. Okay. Making sure we target the right audience. Oh my gosh. Yes. That can be one of the biggest challenges for you, Stephanie. Oh, and then Pamela said, sometimes I don't know how to bring business into my conversation, health and wellness. Absolutely. So let's start with Stephanie's, if you don't mind me just kind of addressing that, Stephanie. That I always find is the hardest thing, is finding your tribe. Oh my gosh. I think most people can kind of agree. Or it can be the hardest. Some things, it depends on what you're offering. You know, I always joked, I kind of joke, I was like, oh my God, why can't I just been a plumber? Like, it's really simple. You have clogged pipes. You need someone who's going to unclog the pipes. Instead, I'm kind of a mental plumber. But oftentimes people, again, they don't know that they need you, and they don't know that they might even be the right person for your audience. So oftentimes it's your methods of reaching out to them, which is talking about the benefits of what you offer gives. And then really, actually, believe it or not, talking about those pain points, because really it's pain that people respond to. Like crazy. And knowing what that pain is causing them. And I'll just use an example. So for instance, and we'll get to, I broke my toe, I think a couple months ago. So if you think about, the pain is the broken toe. Well, the problem is the broken toe, but that's not the pain. The pain is everything after that. The pain is I couldn't run, I could barely walk, I had to wear a horrible shoe. So sometimes people know that there's a problem, but they don't really understand how that's impacting them. So being able to talk about that kind of massages people and gets them open. Anyone else? And then Pamela said, sometimes don't know how to bring business into your conversation, health and wellness. Well, that I will be the first one to say, Pamela, usually when you find that it's kind of weird like that, because I remember when I went through that stage years ago, before I even knew about branding, I had a business for 14, 15 years. That means that oftentimes it's just a little bit of a signal that maybe that personal brand isn't solid. Because when you're kind of really, really clear on, okay, it's almost like business and that doesn't really have a dividing point. You learned the ins and outs about being able to talk fluidly about what you have to offer and how it's going to benefit people. And that just kind of goes back to that, having that, not so much the mission statement, but having that elevator pitch, being able to bring it all and give context to your value and how it can benefit other people in a non-salesy conversational way. So for that, I would just say, definitely think about your personal brand and seeing if you've defined yourself clearly on what your identity is and how to kind of start articulating that in a way that doesn't create like a barrier. That makes sense. Anyone else? Absolutely. So Pamela said, right, don't want to sound salesy. Yes. And it can be very uncomfortable because when you don't really know, it's most of the issues, I always say, I know this is, but might be bold, but I usually tend to think about 80% of those kind of issues really come from internal stuff. Because oftentimes you think about that, that goes back to value. Some people feel like, well, do I have the voice to really say that? Are people really going to listen to me? Is what I have to say important? So oftentimes those are mindset tricks or issues, barriers. And that's actually where I do most of my coaching. You can change the way someone sees something. Thoughts are based on, actions are based on thoughts. You can change the way they think about themselves and what they have to offer. It changes their actions. So definitely, if you want to chat more about it, please let me know, Pamela. Definitely can probably give you some insights.